Hey everybody, Michael Pavlovich here again, and in this video we're going to cover the new GoZ Plus plugin that Reallusion just released. This video is going to be a three-parter, so obviously look at the chapters and figure out which workflow is going to make the most sense for you, and then just watch that section. In the first section, we're going to send an asset from Character Creator to ZBrush using GoZ Plus. So with one button push, Character Creator is going to subdivide our asset for high-resolution sculpting. It's going to transfer the color map texture to PolyPaint, and the normal map texture is going to be a detail layer applied to our object. And it's going to send all that over to ZBrush so we can modify the asset. We're basically going to turn a lion head into an eagle head. Then we're going to send that all back to Character Creator. Again, one button push, it's going to take our high-res sculptural changes and bake that to a new normal map. The PolyPaint is going to get baked to a new color map, and it's all going to be applied back in Character Creator in the material. In the second section, we're going to take a ZBrush asset that we made in ZBrush, and again, with a single button push, we're going to send that over to Character Creator with a baked normal map and color map. And we're going to talk about how easy it is to create a custom metallic and roughness map to fine-tune your PBR appearance, and also how to create a library asset so you can use any clothing and accessories you create for any character that you want later. Finally, in the last section, we're going to GoZ a character base mesh to ZBrush. We're going to customize them and detail them up, add clothing and accessories, and then we're going to use the GoZ Plus plugin to send it all back to Character Creator. So again, one button push is going to send over the PolyPaint as a color map, high-res details as a normal map, and of course, while we're in Character Creator, we can animate and pose our character, send that pose back as a pose that we can add to our ZBrush pose library. And because we're in ZBrush with all that posed high-res juicy detail, we can easily export that and 3D print the result. So, covers a lot. Let's get started. So before we get too far, we need to talk about how we install the CC GoZ plugin for ZBrush. Luckily, it's super easy. Number one, as usual, start with the Reallusion hub. Hit this little refresh icon up in the upper right-hand corner. Grab make sure you have the latest Character Creator. Hit that open button. And then once you have Character Creator open, you need to send something back to ZBrush. And it could be a character, it could be an accessory, whatever. In this case, I'm just going to go in here to Content. We're going to scroll down here to Props, and then there's a PBR folder. You can follow along if you'd like, and there's a lion head in here. So I'm going to double click this lion head, and if we click the scene button over here, you're going to see we have a lion head prop that's just a lion head. And just like we've previously done in Character Creator, if you scroll down to the Reallusion Character Creator playlists, we've sent a ton of stuff from Character Creator to ZBrush and back again using the GoZ button. This is no different, really. We have an object selected. We're going to go up here to this GoZ button in the menu bar and tap that, and it's going to prompt me to go, hey, in order to use the new GoZ Plus, we need to know what version of ZBrush to install it to. Go ahead and hit OK, and that will go ahead and install the ZBrush plugin. So now when we send this over to ZBrush, we can send it back and bake our maps at the same time. Now, I realize I shouldn't project. I'm probably not going to send a bunch of stuff from Character Creator like a prop to ZBrush and modify it and bring it back. But in order to explain the basic functionality and how to install the program, that's where I'm going to start. If you're here wondering, well, how do I make an accessory and send it back? Go to the next chapter. We're going to get there, but we're going to start simple. So we've already installed the GoZ plugin. We have our lion head selected and GoZ'd, and you're going to see right in here in this GoZ settings, we have some new options. Number one, up here at the top, we have a template. It's already set to create because we're starting fresh. We don't have something in ZBrush that exists. This is a brand new object to ZBrush. You're also going to notice, again, like I mentioned, if you're going to use this let's call it the classic workflow where you're sending back and forth Character Creator meshes to ZBrush and back again with just the low-res mesh, and you're not planning on baking any diffuse or normal maps, all you need to do to re-enable that type of workflow is just go over here and say enable GoZ Plus, just turn that off. However, if we are, and we are in this case, we're going to go ahead and enable that. And you're going to see right here at the diffuse section, it's set to all. Now, when we get to more complex assets later on in this tutorial, you can go through here and you can say none, and you're going to see that's going to turn off the diffuse checkbox. You can go in here and say none for the normal map. You can, or if you turn these on, it's automatically going to update these drop-down menus. So when you have a lot of objects, these are really nice to do bulk actions, and then you can go in here and modify in a way that makes sense. Subdivision is set to default right now. All that means is it's going to subdivide this object 4 times, giving us about an estimated 1.5 million triangles. If I want, I can click this drop-down button. You can click subdivision subdivision level 5, it'll give you a estimated triangle count that it's going to send over and the number of subdivisions it's going to end up in ZBrush. The diffuse checkbox means if we cancel out of this and we go in here to the material tab with this object selected, you're going to see we have a base color plugged in and we have a normal map plugged in. It's going to transfer this color map information to the ZBrush Polypaint for our object, and it's going to transfer this normal map detail information to a detail layer, sculptable detail layer in ZBrush. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that Go Z button again. And again, we're going to create, enables Go Z Plus. We're going to bake our base color map to a diffuse texture. We're going to bake our normal map to sculptable details in ZBrush. We're going to subdivide this up 5 times. We can always subdivide more in ZBrush if we want. Smooth, generally speaking, if you're sending over a round organic object, you can have the smooth button on and it will average the vertices as it subdivides and it'll generally work. If you're sending over a hard surface object, maybe turn smooth off. You can test and see which one's going to work better for you, but generally speaking, hard surface objects, keep smooth off. It won't average the verts or melt your verts as it subdivides. And then finally, any warnings that it has. It says invalid mesh name. I'm guessing because there's a space here, it's going to want to put an underscore. That's totally fine. If we're ready to go, we can say Go Z, and that's going to send, well, for us, it's going to launch ZBrush since we had that closed to install the plugin. And you're going to see in ZBrush, it's bringing over the model, it's importing the texture map, it's transferring that texture map to my Polypaint and the detail normals to a sculptable layer. So let's talk about what is in ZBrush now. If we go in here to our subtool menu, you're going to see we have a subtool. We have this little paintbrush icon that we can toggle on and off. That's our colorize or our Polypaint that's applied. And you're also going to see if we scroll down here, if we go into layers, we have a CC detail map. If we toggle that on and off, you're going to see that is our normal map detail applied to our object. Now, if you want to sculpt on this layer, all you got to do is go in there and click on that record button, and that will turn it into a record mode layer that you can modify. And then if you're done sculpting on that layer, you can turn record off and you're kind of back to where you started. I'm going to keep this simple. So what I'm going to do is for this Polypaint here, I'm going to choose like a middle gray over here in my color. I'm going to go in here. Well, first I have my standard brush selected. I'm going to turn on RGB, RGB intensity up to 100, color, fill object. That's going to flood all my verts with just a base gray color. So we're going to go from kind of a mottled, rusty, beat up lion's head to a nice steel, shiny eagle head, let's say. And then for those details, I'm just going to sculpt on the character at the highest subdivision level in ZBrush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say bake all. That's going to bake all the details from our normal map into our sculptable mesh here. I'm going to go ahead and turn off perspective, or you can hit P on your keyboard. I'm going to tap X on my keyboard to turn on X symmetry. If you go in here to transform, you'll see X just toggles on symmetry, and then in this case, it's set to X symmetry. And we'll go ahead and modify this. So if we go in here to geometry, you're going to see we have, again, just like when we set it over, we said subdivide it up 5 times. So here's subdivision level 1. This is kind of our low game res mesh here. And then if we go to subdivision level 2, 3, 4, and finally 5, this is our highest subdivision detail layer. If you want more, just hit this divide button and just continue subdividing up. And if I'm going to change anything drastically in ZBrush, I'm going to go down to subdivision level 1, so just drag that slider to the left. And for example, for an eagle head, I'm going to like smooth out these ears. We can turn that into like a feather or something. And for this nose, we're going to smooth that nose out. And you know, if we smooth this nose out, you're going to see the nostrils kind of pinch a little bit. Hold down Shift to start smoothing and let go of Shift. That'll run an alternate algorithm that'll kind of smooth that out. You can also go into like your H polish brush. This isn't going to be a ZBrush tutorial per se. You know, use your ZBrush knowledge to your advantage. But just basic sculpting techniques here. We'll go through and we'll just kind of modify this into an eagle head here. So there's our kind of our base changes here. If I go up to subdivision level 2, you're going to see we have more polygons that we can sculpt on. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, just continue to smooth that lion's head nose out of our mesh here, all the way up to subdivision level 5. And just so you know what's available to you, if you're like, oh, you know what, I filled that Polypaint, but then if I go in here to texture map, I can't get that base color texture map from Character Creator back on. I changed my mind. I don't want to do a steel one. I want to start with this one. An easy way to do that is if you go in here and you have your object selected and you're in the Material tab, you have base color here. I like to go in here to launch. So here's the launch button. Just click that button. That's going to launch Photoshop or whatever your image editing program of choice is, and there's your base color. I'm going to go in here to File, Save As. We're going to throw this right on our desktop as, you know, whatever name, diffuse, as a JPEG is fine. I'm going to go back in here to ZBrush, say Texture Import. Again, we'll go to our desktop, load in that texture. I'm going to go in here to my texture map selector for my subtool, and we're going to choose that texture. Here it is back on our object, and then to apply that as a polypaint, all we have to do is go in here to polypaint, polypaint from texture. That will transfer that texture map to our polypaint. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Z to undo that. We'll turn our texture off, and we'll go ahead and turn our texture off here as well as in here. So let's just go ahead and finish this out. So again, just work your way up your subdivision levels. We'll move this stuff around. We'll dial in a little bit more. We'll just sculpt for now. You can sculpt and paint at the same time. You have Z-Add and RGB turned on, but in our case, we'll do a sculpting pass first, and then we'll follow up with a poly paint. Now, obviously, eagles aren't going to have a lot of teeth, so I'm going to go ahead and smooth those out of our mouth here. And then, you know what? I still think these ears are a little too lionish, so we're going to go ahead and really smooth those out on the lowest subdivision level, and then back here and like subdivision level, you know, it'll go all the way up to subdivision level 5. Let's go in here to BC Brush Chisel Organic. I think there's some stuff in here we can borrow. Feel free to use any alphas or anything in ZBrush to your advantage, but we're going to go through here and we'll choose maybe this animal fur. We'll use this as a proxy for a feather, so we're just going to kind of pull this out. In fact, if you want to switch the stroke over here to the new drag stamp, you can pull and then rotate the stamp if you want to. I'm just going to switch back to drag rect. So we'll do like one pass of like some feathery stuff over here, and then on top of that, we'll add some more feathers. Again, just to go back to, you know, primary forms and secondary forms, I'm going to drop down to subdivision level 2, and we'll kind of move this mouth back. We'll make this a little more pointy. If you want to move two separate parts of an object, you can hold down Control and go in here to Mask Lasso. You can mask one end out, or you can go in here to your Move Brush and go in here to Brush Settings, Auto Masking, turn on Topological, change that range down to say 1.5, and then you can move the top parts freely from disassociated bottom parts, or again, like you said, you can just use masking to kind of mask stuff out while you're working on it. Now, while we're sculpting, we don't have to sculpt with our polypaint turned on. We can go back here, turn off colorize. We can swap out our material. If you want to go in here and choose a different type of material, we'll put a white color back on. And again, we didn't lose our polypaint. All we got to do is turn that paintbrush icon back on. We got our polypaint back. But if you have the polypaint off, you can go through here and change your colors and change your materials on the fly. Now we'll turn our polypaint back on, and if we want to just focus on the polypaint, one easy thing I can do is we can hit BPA, which will grab our paintbrush, which is essentially the standard brush with Z-Add turned off and RGB turned on, and then we can go in here and we can, let's say, we can tap C to sample a color, then we go in here and choose a brighter color, maybe a little bluish, and again, if you're using the standard brush, RGB on, Z-Add off, just to use it as a paintbrush. You could drop your RGB intensity down to a lower number. You can go in here and you can paint some highlights here. And in fact, if you want to mask, for example, if you want to go down here to masking, we can go in here and say mask by cavity. That will go through and mask all of your cavity areas. If you want your mask to exist, but you don't want to see it while you're painting, you can go in here and turn off the View Mask button temporarily, and then you can go through here, and again, with that mask turned on, you can go in here and you can kind of paint highlights in the broad areas, and then we can Control Tap to invert our mask, and we can, again, turn that off, the visibility of that mask off, and then we'll go in here, again, tap C to sample a color underneath your cursor, and then we'll choose maybe a darker color, and then in the crevices we'll go ahead and paint in a little bit of a darker gray. Feel free to poly paint this up as much as you want, spend as much time. Control drag to unmask everything. Again, if you turn View Mask on, nothing's there anymore. So here we have our updated poly paint, we have our updated sculpt, we turned our lion head into an eagle head. Again, feel free to spend as much time on this as you'd like. We're just doing a little quick demo here. So now we're ready to send this back to Character Creator, and when we do that, we're going to be, number one, updating. If I go down here to geometry again, we're going to be updating the vert positions for our low game res, we'll call it, as well as anything above this, it's going to bake that to a normal map and a base color map. Now, if you're familiar with previous uses of GoZ with Character Creator and ZBrush, you might be tempted to go in here to Tool and say GoZ all are visible right here. Don't do that. If you're using the classic workflow, feel free to use those, but we're going to be baking normal maps and color maps. So what we need to do is go in here to our Z plugin menu. I'm going to drag that over here to the left, and you're going to see the CC GoZ Plus plugin has been installed. If you want to know where that is, you can go in here to your C, Program Files, Max on ZBrush 2024, Z Startup, Z Plug 64, and in here you're going to see a CC GoZ data and a CC GoZ Z script that's been installed for you. So what I'm going to do is in the Z plugin GoZ Plus window, you're going to see Polypaint and Diffuse is turned on. So our Polypaint is going to be baked to a diffuse base color map. Our details that we sculpted on subdivision level 5 in this case are going to be baked to a normal map to our low res object. The map size, you can go through here and use these templates. We'll stick with 2048. And then in this case, since we only have one object, GoZ is for whatever object is selected, it'll send over. GoZ all obviously will send all regardless of visibility. And then visible will just send over the things that have the little eye icon turned on. In this particular case, all three buttons are going to do the exact same thing. So I'll just go ahead and hit that GoZ button. Now, while I'm doing this, you're going to see ZBrush do a little work under the hood. Essentially what it's doing, and you'll see over here in the texture area, there's the base color getting baked. So our poly paint is being transferred to a texture map. Our normal map was transferred. And then back here, if we click on Character Creator, we have a GoZ options window that popped up. It's going to default to updating both the mesh and the texture. Of course, if you just want to update your textures without changing the lion head mesh for some reason, just uncheck mesh and it won't update your mesh. In this case, obviously we want to update our mesh. We also want to update our textures. It should import at 2048. If you want to make sure it does, just go down here to the texture size, choose 2048. And then all we have to do is hit this update button. And you're going to see here is our updated model. It's now a bird head. This model is a little bit different. When we have it selected, you'll see the material. The base color has been updated with our new poly paint. The bump map has been updated with our new normal map. However, we still have some old legacy textures plugged in. The displacement map we don't really need anymore, so go ahead and select that, then hit this trash can icon. Same thing with the AO map. We'll just go ahead and trash that. So now here we have, again, our base color, our normal map applied. In this case, we have a pretty noisy metallic. You know, this had rust on it originally. Let's say we wanted to do a clean version of this. So what I'm going to do, again, is choose metallic. I'm going to hit this launch button that we're already familiar with. That's going to send that over to Photoshop. Now, in this case, if I want to make this all metallic, I can hit D on my keyboard. That'll switch my colors to black and white, foreground and background. Then hit X. That'll switch it to foreground as white. And then I'm just going to go in here and do a fill. I don't know, what's my Alt-E, L, foreground color. Okay, fill this with white, however you feel like. And you're going to see we have a temp image open right here. So what I'm going to do is hit Control-S to save what we've done. I'm going to close out that window. This one we don't need anymore. This is just our base color we were talking about earlier. I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And now when I go back to Character Creator, you're going to see our metallic has been updated to white. So now everything is metallic. If it was black, nothing would be metallic. And if it was a mix of black and white, you know, it would be a mix of metallic and not metallic. Now, if you do want to do fancier things with the roughness map, for example, we'll get into how you can make very specific changes to metallic and roughness maps later on in this very video. But for now, what we're going to do is go over here to the roughness. We'll keep this simple. We're going to go ahead and launch that one as well. And we'll give, I don't know how rough to make this thing. I'm just going to make a guess. In fact, I'm just going to hold down Alt, sample one of this mid gray in here. And again, just fill this with a mid gray, hit Control-S to save, click out of here, go back into Character Creator, and here we go. Our roughness map has been updated to just a default base roughness value. Now, what you can do is, for example, on this roughness, you can, instead of launching, go one to the left, and that's Adjust Color. That will open up the Adjust Color window, and in here, you can go through, and if you change the brightness on that roughness, you're going to see the brighter we make it, the more matte the finish is going to be, and then the darker we make it, the more reflective or shiny our surface is going to be. So you can use this in a pinch to kind of dial in the overall look, or you can go down here and hit the reset button. Or if you want to be very precise and don't want to rely on that, just feel free to select any of these maps and hit launch and then save it and update it. Same thing for color. If you want to go in here and just quickly launch the color and adjust it in Photoshop, or if you want to just quickly do something like adjusting the brightness, the color, contrast, hue, saturation, any of that, you can just do in the material. So that was just a really quick overview of how you can install, number one, install the ZBrush plugin, and number two, if it ever comes up, you can send something from Character Creator over to ZBrush, modify it, send it back with changes, and bake those changes. Just really quickly, just so you can know what's happening under the hood, if you go back to ZBrush, if you go in here to texture, you're going to see there's our new base color map and our new normal map. So for anything you do in ZBrush, if you have the lion head selected, when we sent it over, it had a subdivision level 1 or a game res mesh in Character Creator. It has UVs. In fact, if you want to go down into your UV map menu and say morph UV, you can morph your UV out or your mesh out to your UVs, and you can sculpt as it's flattened or paint as it's flattened. Of course, if you're going to do that, you're going to want to go back up to subdivision level 5, which it won't let you unless you're out of morph UV. We'll go back to subdivision level 5. And then we'll go back to morph UV. So if you want to sculpt in a flattened state or paint in a flattened state, you're totally able to do that. I'm just showing you that this thing does indeed have UVs. So we'll go ahead and morph that back. And then the other thing we need is subdivision history. So it's sent over subdivision level 1. It subdivided it for us up to subdivision level 5. It gave us our normal map details that we baked back into our sculptable detail, our sculptable mesh here, a high-res mesh. And if I want to, I can also go in here to texture create. We can say new from Polypaint. That's going to transfer our Polypaint data to our UVs. That's basically how it made its color map. And then also down here under normal map, tangent, smooth UV, smooth normals. If you hit create normal map, it'll tell you you have to switch to whatever subdivision you want to bake from, which in our case is subdivision level 1. Now if you hit create normal map, that will go through and bake your normal map. So if you wanted to do this manually, you could go through and create your texture maps like this. Just hit that clone texture button, clone normal map button. That will go ahead and put it in your texture palette as something selectable. Select it, hit this export button, and then manually go in here, double click your base color, go and find where that base color is, wherever you saved it out of ZBrush, and then load it in here. So that's the manual way. In fact, in ZBrush, if you wanted to go into Z Plugin Multi-Map Exporter, you can go in here and create all sorts of maps and export options that you have available to you. Again, this is just an easy way to have it do all the heavy lifting for you. It'll bake your normal and your color map out, send it over to Character Creator, plug in your textures for you, and you're off to the races here. So next what we're going to do is, I'm assuming what most people are going to be doing is creating something in ZBrush and then sending and baking stuff back to Character Creator to use as like a clothing item or accessory. If you want to do this with a whole character with clothing and accessories, I hate to keep doing this, go to the next chapter. That's the next thing we're going to talk about. What we're going to do is just create a generic like hockey mask basically, and then send that over to Character Creator and then use that as an accessory for multiple characters. So in order to do that, I need to load up my model. So I'm just going to double click my Z project here. Let's talk a little bit about what is required in order for you to use this functionality. So number one, you need the plugin installed, which you've already done. If we go in here to our Z plugin menu, you're going to see CC Go Z Plus window is in there. Number two, we have our actual model here. So you're going to see it's all poly painted nicely. And if I turn this colorize on and off, this little paintbrush button, you're going to see that's our poly paint. That's doing a little bit of visual storytelling, you know, around the mouth holes and the eye holes. It's a little gunkier, a little more moisture collecting there. And then over here on the straps, there's some detail. Now, if you look up here in the upper left, for you, it'll probably be in the upper right, but in the upper left of my screen, this is 3.173 million points. You technically could animate this if you wanted to, but that's really heavy mesh. So usually what you want to do is animate a lighter mesh and then bake in all of this detail as a normal map or a base color map, right? So instead of sending over 3 million polygons, if we go down here to our geometry section, you're going to see I'm on subdivision level 4. So if I turn off my colorize and we just look at our model here, you're going to see I have a ton of detail over here in the strap. We got some hockey related violence applied to our helmet here, or our mask. And all of this is on our highest subdivision level. And if I drop down, you're going to see I'm losing more and more detail. But we end up getting down to subdivision level 1, which if I turn on polyframe or look up here, now we're down to active points of 49,000 active points. Now, Granted, that's not super low, but it's certainly better than 3 million polygons, right? Of course, you can be as frugal as you want to with how many polygons are in your subdivision level 1. If you want more information on, hey, I have a high-res sculpt, how do I make a low-res and then subdivide up and get my detail back? If you go to my YouTube channel here, there's a ZRemesh and project history refresher. That'll kind of walk you through the basics of generating a low-res asset that you can get your details subdivided and projected to, along with a polypaint if you already have one. And then once you have that, that's step one. You need a low-res version of your mesh that if you subdivide it up, you now have your high-res version of the mesh. And on that high-res, you can go ahead and polypaint the texture that you want. The other thing you need is UV. So if we go down here to our texture map, you can see we can do a new from UV map or a new from UV check. What this one does is look at your UVs and make sure that you don't have any overlapping UVs. If you do, you'll see red in your texture map here. So you can see our UVs exist and they are fine. So we'll go ahead and turn our texture off here, and we'll also go ahead and turn our texture off there. And if you want to create UVs in ZBrush, again, I got you covered. Go to my YouTube channel. There's a UV map unwrap, cutting seams. You can do that in conjunction with the Z plugin UV master. You can use the UV your object and or go in here to UV map create, and you can use creased edges and unwrap to create your UVs here. So one more time for our checklist, we need a low-res game res let's call it low-res. We need a low-res version of our mesh that has UVs that we can subdivide up, get our details so that we can bake those details to a normal map and bake our high-res poly paint to a base color map. If you have those appropriate necessary requirements in order to utilize this GoZ Plus, you're good to go. So what we have is our mask here selected. We're going to go back to our Z plugin menu, and in here's our GoZ Plus. We're going to send this over to Character Creator. If I go back to Character Creator, we just have this scene here. I'm going to go here to File, New Project. And in fact, let's go ahead and apply this to a character. I'm going to go in here to Content, Custom. I'm going to load up a pre-existing character. You don't have to do this part, but I'm going to have a little bit more fun with this asset we're going to send over. So once that's loaded up, I'm going to go down here to Motion, Pose, A Pose. We'll zoom in here. He's already got a helmet on, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that helmet and eyes off. So when we send this mask over, we're going to go ahead and apply it to our character. So back in ZBrush, we've got our mask selected. I'm going to go Z+. We'll choose 2048. Again, since this is just one object, any of these buttons is going to do the exact same thing. I'll go ahead and hit Go Z, which will go Z selected, which in this case is everything. And again, if you watch closely, you're going to see over here in this texture section, it's baking out our poly paint to a texture map, our normal map to a texture map, and then it's going to come back to Character Creator. And we got our options box here. You're going to see the template. If you have a bunch of things in here, you can change the template to bring in everything as accessories, clothing, or prop. In this case, I'm going to choose Create Accessory, or you can go down here to Action and choose Create Accessory. Mesh is checked on. We're not updating a mesh like we were in the previous section. We have a brand new mesh, so this has to be checked on. That's why it's grayed out. Over here, if you want to bring in your normal map and polypaint, which we do, we have texture checked on. So again, we're updating our mesh and texture, and then texture size will just be whatever we chose. So we're going to say update. And here we have our hockey mask applied as an accessory to our existing character we have in here. Now, granted, it's not really placed very well, so there's a few things we need to do to get this accessory to work. First thing we're going to do, with the accessory selected, we're going to go over here to the Modify Attribute tab. We're going to scroll down here to where it says Attach, Pick Parent. So we're going to say Pick Parent, and we're going to click in the head area, and that'll go ahead and choose the CC base head joint. If for some reason that doesn't work, just go over here to the three dots and go in here and manually choose whatever bone makes sense for this accessory to be attached to. Now, if I want to move this, if I hit W and then zoom out, you're going to see the pivot for this object is way down here at the base. I'm going to choose this little quick set middle button right here. So now when I zoom in, you're going to see the move is now in the middle of the mask. So I'm going to go ahead and move this into place with W to go into move mode, and then E to go into rotate, and then R to go into scale, just like most programs. We'll go ahead and set this on his head here. All right, looks like that fits nicely. In fact, you know what? Let's swap out his bolter with the chain sword. I think that'll be a little more appropriate. And then if we want to, we can go in here to content. I'm going to go back to template, and we'll scroll down here to animation. I got a single-handed animation in here. And to apply this to our character, we're going to go back here to scene, choose our CC3 base plus group node, And now we can go through here and we'll just double click one of these animations here. We can play it. And in fact, if you get something close that you like, you can always go in here to this motion tab. You can say edit pose. And then you'll have a little pose dummy in here you can choose options for, or you can go in here and just click and move pieces around. You can go in through here and rotate the head, and in this case we can change expressions. Of course you're not going to be able to see them behind the mask, but go through here, edit the pose to your liking. We can go ahead and close out of this window, and now you have a fully updated posed animatable character with your new accessory. Let's go back here to motion, pose, a pose. And we'll double click our mask to select it, and then we'll hit F to frame to zoom in on the head area. And you're going to see a couple of problems here. So again, double clicking the helmet here. The buttons right now are just kind of white and matte. We want them shiny and metallic. So if we go over here to our material tab and we scroll up in this case, again, it baked over our polypaint to a base color map. It baked over our high-res sculpt details to a tangent normal. So again, if we zoom in here, we're going to see all that detail that we had in our high-res sculpt baked to our low-res mesh. However, our metallic is all black, which means there's no metal pieces, and then our roughness is just one value. So let's change that. I'm going to start with our base color. So I'm going to select our base color, and I'm going to scroll down and hit this launch button. And we're going to use our base color as a foundation for those other maps. So first, let's do the metal part. So I'm going to hit W on my keyboard. I'm going to select all these gray areas. Those are what my metal is filled with. That color is filled. Contiguous is turned off, so I can select all the gray pieces. I'm going to make a new layer here. Again, just like we did earlier, I'm going to hit D, then X to get white as my foreground color, and then do Edit, Fill, Control D to deselect, and now we have all of those metal parts filled with white. That means they'll be metallic. The rest of these areas is still filled with our base color, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that real quick. So I'm going to select the background area. I'm going to hit X on my keyboard to have X, or have black as our foreground color now, and then again Alt-E-L to fill in the background. So now all of this is a metallic map, so I'm going to go ahead and say Control-E to merge this down. File. If I do File Save, which I don't want to do, if you go back to Character Creator, if you save it and close it, it'll update your base color with this black and white image. I do not want that. So I'm going to go in here to File, Save As. And you can keep this as a PNG if you want. I'm going to rename this to Hockey Mask Metallic. We'll go ahead and say large file. We're going to go back to Character Creator, double click the metallic. You'll see there's your, obviously navigate to the folder where you saved your texture out from Photoshop. Double click that. That'll bring it in, and you're going to see now the buttons are metallic. However, they're not shiny enough. Now we need to think about what areas of our texture do we want to be shiny and what areas do we want to be matte. And again, we can control that with our base color. Again, if you just want to do an overall adjustment, you can just select that roughness, go in here to adjust. Then if you take this brightness right and left, you can say, hey, everything's shiny or everything's matte. You can just make those changes. But of course, we want a little more control than that. So I'm going to say reset, close that out. We're going to go back to our base color. We're going to relaunch that into Photoshop. And just so I have a little bit more control, I'm going to hit W. I'm going to select all of my metal components. I'm going to make a new layer with that, clicking that plus sign here. I'm again Alt-E-L. I know that's a weird way to fill things, but that's just how I do it. Alt-E-L to fill with foreground color. Control-D to deselect. So now we have our metal parts. We'll go ahead and name this metal. Let's go ahead and select our cloth part. So hit W. All these gray areas here are cloth. In fact, if you wanted to, you can go in here to like select color range. In this case, what I'm going to do is just hit L on my keyboard so I can go to lasso selection. I'm just going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to add all of these areas. Now, granted, the little areas that aren't gray in here are dirt in our cloth. So if you wanted to, you could save that dirt off as another layer and control that roughness separately from the cloth. In this case, everything in the cloth area, I'm just going to adjust all at once. So we're going to make another layer here. We'll go ahead and fill that. Again, this value doesn't matter right now, and we'll call this cloth. And then the background, we're just going to desaturate. Now you could go in here to image adjustments and then say desaturate. I'm going to do it just so we make it a little less destructive. I'm going to go down here to the adjustment layers. I'm going to say hue sat. And then we're going to say saturation, pull that all the way to the left. And then in fact, on top of here, I'm going to say levels. So what I can do is in this levels here, I can do an overall So these are where you can kind of clamp your values here. If I take this, I can make everything darker, which makes it shinier, or I can go over here and make everything lighter, which makes it more matte. Now in this case, you know, the grimy areas are darker, the little vent holes next to his mouth and his eyes. In that case, I kind of do want those areas to be shinier. So in this case, this actually works out really nicely. So what we could do is just kind of increase the contrast up here to make the gross or dirty areas shinier, and then the lighter areas more matte. That's perfectly fine. Now on the cloth here, this is all pure white, which means it's going to be very matte. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to make another levels adjustment layer. Now if I start adjusting this levels, it's going to adjust everything below it, but if I hold down Alt and click between here, now it's just going to affect the cloth. So again, I can take these clamp values and say, you know what, cloth is going to be pretty matte. It's not going to be dark and shiny, it's going to be pretty matte, so I'm going to say make that a pretty light gray. For the metal, same deal. Adjustment layers, levels, hold down Alt. And then for the metal here, I'm going to say it's going to be maybe not super dark or chrome, but certainly darker than cloth. So we're going to make this a little darker here. So now we have an updated roughness map. Now again, I don't want to just Control S to save because it's going to save over the diffuse map we started with. So one more time, Control Shift S, throw that onto our desktop here. I'm going to save this as a PNG and we'll call it Hockey Mask Roughness, and we'll say large. And one more time, if we go back here to Character Creator, double click our roughness, grab that image in here. Now our buttons are really shiny. Our face mask is kind of a mix between shiny and matte based on those values. Again, if you want to do an overall adjustment, feel free to go in here to adjust color and change the brightness or the contrast if you want, or you can go and fine tune how you want this to look by hopping back here into Photoshop, making changes to these. If you want to make the cloth a little shinier, for example, just go to the levels attached to the cloth and then, you know, pull that so it's a little bit darker. Again, Control Shift S to save over the roughness, and then go back in here to Character Creator to update it. Now, this mask is looking pretty good, but I don't want to just use it on this character. I want to use it on another character later. So with in our Scene tab, with the mask selected, I'm going to go in here to Content, Custom, and this is a head accessory. So I'm going to scroll down to the accessory section underneath head and our mask selected. I'm going to hit save, and it's going to default to asset type accessory head. We're going to go ahead and name this Hockey Mask, say OK. That'll go ahead and generate a thumbnail with the asset. Of course, if I just want to see the mask, again, I don't want to confuse people and have them think that they're getting a mask with a bunch of other stuff. So I'm going to go in here to my scene. We're going to turn off everything except for the mask. We're going to zoom in. And then back here on content, I can right click. We can say capture thumbnail, and that'll update our thumbnail for that asset. So when I double click this to assign it to another character later, number one, it's obvious that that's what this is. And number two, it's going to assign this as a mask that is attached to the head bone that we can move into place for our new character, and they will have their own custom little hockey mask. Now, I should mention, if you go to my YouTube channel and you scroll down to the live stream full episodes, you'll see the making of this hockey mask, as well as the making of the Ultramarine, as well as the making of this next character we're about to talk about, the Cooper from Fallout 4. We have live streams on how to make all this stuff, so obviously check those out if you're wondering how we made those in ZBrush. Now, what if you want to make a character from Character Creator to ZBrush and add accessories and then send it all back and animate it and bring it back with poses? That's what we're going to be doing now. So there's a couple different ways to make a character with Character Creator Base Mesh. One of those ways, if you'll remember, is this free Character Base Meshes video that we recorded. That will walk you through how to download the free Character Base Meshes update them in their pose to whatever you want, change the proportions, and create a character that way. We'll go ahead and do that in Character Creator, so we'll follow a similar path, but we're going to go in here to Content, Template, Actor, Character, Base. We'll double click Neutral M for neutral male, and this is the base that we'll start with. Again, I'm going to be moving fast. This isn't going to be a tutorial on how to make a custom character in Character Creator. This is going to be about how to use GoZ Plus to bake stuff for the character you're making. So again, if you want to know more about this process, check out this free character basis video, or under the Reallusion character section, the Character Creator pipeline, body, and accessories is a really good one to check out. But we'll go down here to remove restore bind pose. That'll put them in an A pose. We'll go in here to the scene tab. Now you can send over the body with the boxers if you want to update the boxers and then send them back with different pattern or sculpting or whatever on it. We're not going to do that. We'll just take those boxers. We'll just delete it out of our scene. Now we can send this over to ZBrush. I'm going to open this up. If we grab the base plus all the way down to the tier line, go in here, and again, we'll hit that GoZ button. And if you were so inclined, you could bake this body texture down to a poly paint for your ZBrush character, and the normal map from the body. All the poor detail and stuff would be baked. I don't really care about that right now. What I'm trying to do is make a base character for my character, and then we'll bake our changes back using GoZ Plus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check off Enable GoZ Plus for now. We're going to go down here to, I'm going to separate out the tear ducts and the eyelashes, and we're going to keep it as an A pose. And it's going to be set to create by default because, again, there's nothing in ZBrush right now. I went ahead and cleared out ZBrush. So we're going to say GoZ. So again, in this section right here, we're not using GoZ Plus just yet, but we're getting our base character in here. Now, just like the other videos, you can go through and change the proportions, make the arms longer, make the legs shorter, make the head bigger, whatever you want to do to make this character your own. And then, of course, you can also go down here to, like, say, geometry, divide, you'll get more resolution. You can turn on X symmetry by tapping X on your keyboard. So you can go through here and, again, sculpt in your details and, you know, modify this character to be whatever you'd like. I'm going to use a little bit of movie magic here. I'm going to subdivide up to subdivision level 6. And you're going to see I'm going to go through here and sculpt. And this is going to be, pretend I sculpted on this for hours. This is going to be our Walton Goggins Cooper from Fallout sculpt. And again, if you want to know how to make that, you can always go down here to my live stream full episodes. We'll have hours of how to create him, the likeness, the Vault-Tec suit, even the ghoul version of him in my live streams. And through some movie magic, I'm going to go ahead and apply my poly paint. This is actually poly paint transfer from scan data texture. So here is our updated character base body with our updated proportions. We sent over an A pose. We've sculpted some details out all the way to poor details, and we've poly painted it. So now I have a new character. But I do want to bake these changes back. Not only do I want to change the proportions of my neutral A pose, I also want to bake my changes from my texture, my normal map, and my color map back. So what I'm going to do is, again, we'll go in here to Z plugin. We're going to use our CC GoZ Plus. We have poly paint, normal turned on. We'll choose 2048. And that'll be 2048 for all of your UDIM, so the head, body, arms, legs, etc. I'm going to go Z visible. And one thing to keep in mind is we updated the positions of the eyeballs, the teeth, the tear line, the eyelashes, all that stuff. So that's why I'm GoZing visible, not just the base body. So back in Character Creator, it's set to update mesh and texture, when in fact, again, I didn't update the poly paint on the teeth or the tongue or anything, so I don't want to update the texture on those items. So I'm going to say update mesh only initially, and then down here next to body, I'm going to check on texture. Now, because we did move our proportions around, I'm going to check on adjust bone to fit morph. Again, we used our A pose, so I'm going to say update. And here you can see everything's been updated. If I go in here to my material, we have our head texture selected. It baked our base color. It baked a custom bump map from our ZBrush source. We have still have the default AO and roughness from the previous body, which we know how to update now. So now we have our updated Cooper. Now, what I'm going to do next is add clothing and accessories. I'm going to create those. In order to do that, when I'm sculpting on something, I like to have a little bit more of a neutral, relaxed pose, especially in the hands. I'm going to be sculpting on those. So what I'm going to do is go in here to Motion, Pose, A Pose. I'm going to make sure all of these are selected. We're going to go Z back. And again, I don't want to bake anything out back to ZBrush. I'm not looking to bake any normal maps to high-res frequency detail or anything. So again, we're going to uncheck Enable GoZ Plus. Again, tear ducts and eyelashes are still separate. And instead of A pose, I'm going to choose current pose. And then we're going to say go Z. And again, a little bit more movie magic. If I hold down shift, turn off the eyeball, and then turn it on, that's going to turn on everything. I'm going to go down here to all high. And you're going to see I already have a suit created with some accessories. We have the little front panel, a lapel, little back object here, boots. And of course, if you want to know how to make this, go to my YouTube channel, scroll down till you see the live stream episodes. You'll see there's the likeness and the Vault-Tec suit that you can learn how to create this asset here. And just like the previous sections, everything needs to have a low-res version. So if I go down to subdivision level 1, here is the low-res version I'm sending over. Here's subdivision level 5 with all my details and my high-resolution poly paint. And then, of course, if I go down here to UV map, I do have UVs. If you want to see them, I can go in here to texture map, create, new from UV check, and there you go. That's what my UVs look like. Go ahead and turn those textures off. Let's go back in here. And now let's send my clothing and accessories back to Character Creator. I've already have the body sitting in Character Creator with the right pose. I don't need to send any of that back. So in ZBrush, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and turn off the eyeball for all the CC base underscore assets. I'm not going to send any of those back over, so I'm going to turn the eyeball all off. Make sure you don't have any of them selected, because if I select the base body, even though the eyeball's off, if he's still visible, it will send him back over. So in this case, we're going to select wire. Here, everything else is turned on. This is all the things we want to send over to Character Creator and go ahead and bake out the normal map and the poly paint. So back here in our Z plugin menu, CC Go Z Plus, we're going to go ahead and choose 4096 to bake out the highest resolution textures available. And we're going to, again, Go Z visible with diffuse and normal checked on. And in ZBrush, you'll see it baking out the normal and the color map over here in the texture section. Once everything's over into Character Creator, you'll have the Go Z options box. And even though I said I'm going to bake out to 4096 for the highest resolution, I don't really need that resolution in Character Creator for all these assets. So for the wire, I'm going to go over here and choose 512. Clips will do 1024. Lapel pin can be 512. That's small. Zipper can be 512. That's small. The device back and device front can be 1024. Boots will have 2048, and then the suit will keep it 4096, nice and high resolution. Now, the template is set to create cloth for everything. You can go through here and say, hey, I want everything to be an accessory, I want everything to be a prop, or you can go in here individually and choose accessory or cloth or prop for any of these assets. What I'm going to do is bring everything in as a cloth and show you how to convert that to an accessory, as well as painting weights or assigning weights for cloth objects. So we're going to go in here, we're just going to say update. And over here in our scene tab, you're going to start seeing things being populated with a bunch of cloth items. And what that's doing when you create a cloth asset is you have a base body and it's transferring. So if we have a pair of gloves, it's transferring the weights from the body to your gloves by taking those weights and basically copying them to any asset that you have on the body. We can modify those weights, which I'll show you in just a second. There we go. So everything's in here now. If we go in here to motion, male, walk, you're going to see number one, there's some weights we need to change in some of these areas on his body. Everything else looks pretty decent. He's walking around. His expressions and bones are all positioned correctly, so we're in good shape mostly. We'll go back here to motion, pose, A pose, and let's talk a little bit about weight. So if we click on the CC Base Plus character, that's the underlying character, skin character basically. If we go over here and click on the suit, or double click in your viewport to select anything, that'll select the suit asset. We're going to go over here to the Modify Attributes tab, and down here you're going to see we have skin weights, transfer skin weights, and convert to accessory. So in the case of the suit, what we want to do is go in here to skin weights, because we like having skin weights. This is a cloth object, but we need to modify it a little bit. So if we zoom in here, and we had some issues right here in kind of the crotch area, I'm going to right click this bone right here, and that's going to choose the right thigh twist. I'm going to choose this little smooth brush down here, and we're just going to smooth out these areas right in here. And if we choose right thigh twist 02, you're going to see we can smooth out some of this. And if we scroll all the way up and choose pelvis, we could probably smooth out some of this here too. So this is one way you can modify your skin weights, is just by going through here. And in this case, what we're doing is we're smoothing the transition between these bones here. And again, we can right click the thigh twist 01 and thigh twist 02 and go through here and smooth some of this out. When you're done, you can hop out of skin weights. And another thing you can do, and we'll go ahead and double click the lapel pin over here. We're going to go in here to skin weights, the skin weights button, again under the modify attributes tab. And if we go in here to selection, we can select all the verts of this object, and you're going to see it's weighted to a bunch of different joints. This particular thing is a rigid object. It's not going to bend between two different joints. So what we're going to do is select the most weighted one, which is the 0.7 on this neck twist 01. We're going to flood that with a value of 1. So now it'll stay a rigid object, and whenever that neck twist 01 moves, this will follow along with it. So we'll hop out of skin weights mode. Another option you could do is, for example, we'll double click this front item right here, this device front. Right now it's a cloth object. We could update the skin weights to keep it rigid, or we could convert this to an accessory. Just click that button. We're going to say bake current shape, and you're going to see it changed from a cloth object to a device object here. So you scroll down, just like we did for the mask, we're going to go in here. We could do pick parent and choose spine 2 or go into the 3 dots. It already has spine 2 selected, so we're in good shape. Of course, if we need to move this, I want to make sure that the pivot is in the middle. So I'm going to do this little quick set middle right here. And that's basically it. We converted that cloth item to an accessory, and you could save any of these assets out. You could save these out as you know, a shirt and accessories that you could apply to different characters if you want. And just like we did in the previous videos, if I, for example, double click the suit here, we can go into the material. Again, we have the base color and the bump map applied, but no metallic or roughness. You know how to create your own metallic and roughness by starting with the base color, making color selections and turning certain things metallic and certain things shiny with your roughness. I'm going to go in here to Photoshop. I'm going to say Control N to make something new. We're going to say 512 by 512. I'm going to choose a medium gray here, HSB at 50, Alt-E-L to fill this out, fill this. We're going to save this on our computer as gray.png, and then we can kind of use this as just a little proxy. So we can go in here, for example, to metallic for my suit and choose gray. We'll go in here to roughness and choose gray. So now for the metallic, if we want to make anything metal, we can go in here to adjust color, and we can say, hey, gray, if you're white, you're full metallic, or if you're black, you're not metallic at all, and we can say okay. And then for the roughness here, again, we'll go in here to adjust, and we can adjust, again, just real quick, we can adjust if it's all shiny, or if it's all matte, or a little mix of both here. But again, if you want to go into the base color and make a more accurate roughness based on the different sections of the suit, you can. Same thing with these metal objects. So for example, if we zoom in here, so we can see the zipper a little bit better, we'll double click this. Again, no metallic and roughness, but for metallic, we can drop in that gray, and for roughness as well. And then metallic, we want to make this full metal, so we're going to say white for metallic, and then roughness will go back into that adjustment, and then we can change that brightness to be less shiny or more shiny. So you can very quickly dial in the values for all the accessories and the suit that we just made. So what if you brought over something as an accessory, or you created an accessory and you change your mind and you want to make it into a cloth object? That's as simple as just double clicking the object, going in here and choosing transfer skin weights, and then choosing a template. Now you're going to see, if I close out of that, all of the cloth items we have in here are defaulting to this t-shirt icon, which for the most part means, hey, we're just taking the base where the pants are or the shirt are and just transferring the body weights to that object. For the most part, that works for pretty much everything you want to do. However, for the boots, for example, we double click the boots down here or select them in our scene. If we go in here and we transfer skin weights, they're already a cloth object, but we can go in here and we can choose the shoe template. So if you have a character with, say, gloves that cover the fingers or partially cover the fingers, or a cloak or a dress, retransfer the skin weights for that object and choose the correct template in order for it to weight a little bit better. So in this instance, we're going to choose shoes, we're going to apply that, and you're going to see the boots, they keep the same name, but you're going to see the icon changed from that t-shirt icon to a boots icon. That means it is a boot object, and it has boot weights transferred to this object. Now, it also has a little bit to do with how clothing is applied to a character and what pieces of what pieces of clothing occlude other pieces, but we're not going to get too deep into that right now. Although one thing I can touch on really quickly, if I double click this suit, for example, you can, just so you know it's available, you can go down here to the hide body mesh tool, and you can go through here and basically choose what areas of the body aren't seen. So example, when I apply this suit to any character in Character Creator, we can make it so that it hides the entire body here, or you can go in here to advanced and choose, for example, if I control click on any of these, that'll bring the mesh back. You can see the skin starting to come back. And then if you just left click on these areas, that will go ahead and get rid of them. So you can go through here manually, or you can go through and just select pieces of the CC base mesh and go down here and choose hide, and that will hide any underlying body meshes that you want. So you can go through here manually for the suit and for the boots. Go through and do the whole hide body mesh thing so that if you were to save out the boots, for example, and apply it to another character, it will hide the correct CC mesh faces for you. So now we have a character in Character Creator, so we can go in here to like motion perform or soft physics. We'll do a dance turn M. So here you can see everything's weighted, everything's moving, all the accessories are working, his face and body is updating as expected. So we have a whole posable character that we can play around with. But what if we want to send these poses back to ZBrush to our high-res source and use that for 3D printing? Because remember, all of this is actually just game res. If we go over here, for example, to the CC3 Base Plus and we choose wireframe on shaded, everything's pretty low poly. All the details that you're seeing, or if we choose the suit, for example, and change this one to wireframe, there's all that detail that you see in the suit is baked to a normal map. That's not actually part of this asset. Now we already know, based on the video that you just sat through, that you could send all of this back as a new mesh with a subdivided new mesh that you could transfer the normal map to a detail layer that you could go and sculpt on. But in ZBrush, we already have, if I go down here to all high, we already have a fully detailed mesh. We don't want to transfer any normal map detail back to ZBrush. We already have high-res sculpted detail, so we're good to go. But what we do want to do is move these verts around into a different pose. So what I'm going to do is hold down Shift. We're going to turn off this eyeball and then Shift, turn that eyeball back on. That's going to turn on all of my subtools here. And then we're going to hop back into Character Creator. And let's go in here to Content, Template, Animation, Motion. There's a couple different places to find poses. There's a pose folder in here. And then there's also, under here is Pose and Expressions, Male. I'm going to say do a standing pose. Let's choose a classic sporty pose here. So we'll go ahead and dial in this pose here. Let's go into the Motion tab. I'm going to click on Edit Pose. Let's go ahead. You can either use the dummy to select different areas, or you can just select it right on the model here. So we're going to go ahead and rotate this out. If you want to, you can also switch to FK mode, and you can choose things like the clavicle and rotate those down if you'd like. And then switch back to IK mode if you want, and then hit W, and you can move these joints around as you would pretty much expect. And you can also hit WER to move, scale, and rotate. In this case, we're just doing move and rotate. So we'll go ahead and put our hand here, and we want to do a thumbs up pose. You can go in here to, say, the left hand and just grab these and, make a fist if you want to. Or you can go in here again into Content, Gesture. There's a sign area. There's hold and sign. And if we scroll down, there is a like in here, so we can double click that. We can assign that to just our left hand, and now we'll have a thumbs up left hand pose. And if we want to change the facial expression, we can go in here to Edit Facial. We'll go in here to Expression. We'll give him like kind of a mildly happy face, and then we'll go back here to the Muscle tab, and we'll make a little worries. I'm going to grab these two here, and we're just going to pull these up. He's kind of smiling. Maybe we'll actually grab that upper lip, raise that up a little bit. And again, if you want to like move the eyes around, just double click to the deselect everything, and then you can grab the eyes here and then just go through and move these around. Again, double click to turn it off. You can use this to kind of move the head around, whatever you want to do. So we've updated the body, we've updated the face, and now we want to send this back to ZBrush. So we're going to go back here to Scene, and we're going to select all of these assets, and we're going to send this back. There's a couple different ways we could do this. One way is we can go back to ZBrush. Before we send our pose over, we can go into the ZBrush Pose Tools plugin I have installed. If you don't know what that is, you can check out this playlist here, the ZBrush Mesh and Reallusion Character Creator workflow, this will show you all about ZBrush Pose Tools and how it works. So we can go in here and we can say record a new pose. That'll put a new recording layer on every single subtool. So when we send this pose back, it will have a recorded layer that you can name. We can also, if we want to use the Go Z Plus functionality, select all these. We're going to say Go Z back. Again, we're not baking any diffuse or normal back, so we're going to say enable Go Z Plus is checked off. However, there is a new relink mesh changes and new layer option, so go ahead and check that on. Again, we already have our tear ducts and eyelashes separated out from previous Go Z-ing, but what we want to do this time is Go Z the current pose over, so make sure you have that checked, and then we'll hit Go Z. There you go. All of our subtools have been updated. I'm going to go to our ZBrush Pose Tools. I'm going to say Refresh Pose List. That's going to look at all of our subtools, at the layers that are in there. And it's going to see that there is a Pose 2 for all of the changes that we just made as a layer. So I can go through here. I can choose it. I can click Rename, and we'll call it Thumbs Up. That'll go ahead and rename all the layers. If I want to go back to my previous kind of default A pose, we can turn off Thumbs Up. And that'll turn off all the layers. So we're kind of back where we started, and then you can just do the exact same thing again and add another pose. You can go back into Character Creator, give it a new pose, Go Z it over. It'll make a new layer for you. You can go in here and update pose tools. You'll have a whole library of poses you can choose from and just cycle through right here under the Pose Tools plugin. And of course, once you have them posed, again, we'll just turn on that thumbs up pose. You can prep this for 3D printing, slice it up, set all the key registration, 3D print it out, and then you have a really cool model. Again, based on your high-res source. Now, and I know we talked about in Character Creator, for example, back in our content, our custom content here, we do have our hockey mask, but instead of, in this case, assigning this accessory and then sending it back over and trying to, again, bake out the normal detail or something like that, you have access to that file, the original source high-res. So if I go down here and just load that in, all I have to do is append. Here we have it as a separate subtool. Then you can just manually go through here and position that correctly. And that's about it. So hopefully that showed you how easy it is to, create something in ZBrush, send it over to Character Creator that's in a performant way, in a low-res way that can be attached to a skeleton and animated appropriately, but still has all the high-res detail from ZBrush that was baked over on a normal map. Your Polypaint was baked over on a base color map. You have the ability to create your own custom metallic and roughness maps if you want without having to go into a big texture program and having a big workflow time sync like that. And as usual, Reallusion is going to have more stuff, so stay tuned. Any cool new things that Reallusion comes out with, I'll try and make a video for, as well as any content you want to see. I'm doing live streams. I'll pick something I want to make and throw it into Character Creator usually, but if you guys have any ideas, let me know. And as well as if anything didn't make sense in the process, drop that in the comments too. I can't promise I'll have a good answer, but I'll give it a shot. So anyway, have fun. See you in the next video, and keep making cool stuff.